Markets closing the day flat despite headline after headline, including, hands down, the stupidest headline I've seen in my 15 years of trading. Let's get into it here today. It is Wednesday, March 11, 2026. Interesting day here in the markets. And if you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We're giving out free levels all the time, especially in the pre-market on our other channel, Carnivore Trades. Gave out the lows this morning in our short video, which was 675 area, we should say area, but I talked about the delta on 676 SPY, and I told members this morning we're probably going to close above that. And yeah, it held on really all day long. This is something that's going to be in the Gamma workshop too, by the way. We really just, that area here, never really changed at all today. I just haven't even updated this, but yeah, you can see right there, end of the day, 676, that positive net dealer there. That really held us up all day long. What was the dumbest headline I've seen in my career? I gotta tell you right now, not really the dumbest headline, but the dumbest reaction. Just like, I don't even want to like justify this with an explanation, but the only way this makes sense is if, let's call, I can't use a certain term because I'll get kicked off the internet. Let's call it a failed bull flag. Another word for failed is, right? And then there's a flag involved. That's the only way something like that makes sense. And the algo is, you know, selling off on that was just absolutely comedy, just absolute comedy. Like, I've seen nuclear war headlines before. That one takes the cake by far. That was probably the highlight of the day. You're not gonna lie, I actually dozed off at one point during the afternoon here. It was a bit of a snooze towards the end of the day. But again, headline after headline. CPI this morning was in line. The market did not really rally all that much. We can flip over to the futures here. And yeah, you can see I'm tired here. I'm sighing right now. But you can see here we had a nice pop on CPI, but it got faded, right? We had a Goldilocks number, but it's not, and we have PCE on Friday too, but it's not factoring in the current oil spike, so I don't think the market really is going to jump for joy at that. And you can see that was kind of the case. We just, you know, we came back in, we rallied back up. We had a nice little trade on NQ this morning. You know, we traded this a few times. I mean, these ES levels are just money for day trading. This 6770 was, I mean, it's an ATM machine, but it is really boring. I gotta say, I definitely gotta say. It does suck, but I did think we were going to hold on to this shelf, and we did. You know, we swept it a few times. I said watch for traps down here, and you know that's what happened. They trapped it like several times here today. So that 676 net dealer though, it's so it was such a signal that we were not going to really go down, even though they threatened it multiple times. Tomorrow, I don't know. I think we might see more of the same. I think the expected move is 70 points on SPX, and I think we got 100 points for Friday, so not really a ton here. And, you know, 670 is still a big level, as is 600 on QQQ. And speaking of QQQ, I'm going to use NQ here. Again, continuing to outperform, memory stocks really leading, but you can see right here, you know, we're tight. We're getting tight again, all right? The last time we were this tight was right around here, and we got movement out of that. So we got pretty tight there, and we got a pretty good move. So we'll see what happens here. We did get I mentioned this last night on X too. We got a buried McClellan as well. You know, anything around 200. Let me see if I'm not sure which one. There we go. So we QQQ. So anything around negative 200 is usually a pretty good buy, which we did hit intraday, and it's interesting how we hit that trend line too. So I'm still kind of in the camp that we have some sort of a tradable low in place. That doesn't mean we can't retrace and whatnot and go retest 600, but I do think for right now, the market's holding up. I mean, like, we had oil bouncing another 5% today. We had headlines of 2 tankers getting, you know, taken out last night in the Strait of Hormuz. And the market's holding up. Again, you know, going back to what I've been saying here, customers are very short, right? They have this pretty negative put delta here. And that is what's keeping the market buoyant. That's why we've got that beach ball underwater. That's why I got SNDK popping up 6% here, and Micron popping up, and Broadcom getting a nice bid the other day. AMD holding up. The equipment makers are doing well, I notice. AMAT, KLA, Lam Research, those have been catching nice bounces here too. So obviously software, you know, quiet day today, but it's holding up, and it's just keeping the market buoyant here. So, you know, again, I keep saying it till we're blue in the face here, but the market, I think those people need to give up. If you really want a bear move, those people need to give up. And I think the only way that happens is we get a squeeze, some sort of counter trend move. And I think the longer we stay above 670 SPY too, the closer we get to that, you know, between here and OPEX. You know, there's only so long you can hold on to these puts for, right? They're just burning a hole in everybody's pocket. And with the, you know, being a negative gamma here, you know, it's not like calls are where the premium is, right? It's in puts. So VVIX closing negative, you know, VIX 25. Maybe not a bad idea to sell puts. You know, if that's something something that you do, just, you know, don't go crazy with it. It's like I said, 670. I think below that's mostly safe. We did not hit our left tail. We didn't even get anywhere close to it. So there was some left tail at 662. You know, we talked about that this morning. Like the reaction to CPI, yeah, they faded the high, but it was not like last Friday with non-farm payroll where we just took a nosedive here. So market's still buoyant here. That's the positive. The other positive is you have kind of a bullish-ish structure here on ES. You definitely have it on NQ, but to the bear's credit here, what's to say this isn't just another lower high, right? So someone actually said in the trading room we might need to just gap this 200-day, 204-hour moving average if they're gonna get through it. That's you know, if it's fair, 25-2, and that's often how levels break. So I just don't see a ton of downside here in the next like week. I mentioned that on Monday, and so far that's been the case. So we'll see if they can break this level here and take us, you know, towards. If they can break this area here, then we can go down to 670, 6720. But I think that's where, you know, I think that's kind of where shorts are stuck. I know that's where shorts are stuck, right? Because that's where they got squeezed on Monday. And it's like they're getting close to it, but not close enough to get them to cover. But they're not squeezing them enough to get them to panic cover, right? So they're not getting, they're still underwater. They're not getting a chance to get out, but they're not being forced to get out either. At least not yet. So we'll see what happens here. That's really what I got for you right now. We're in a tight range, and it's looking like it could even continue into the end of the week, which I hope it doesn't. But I think the bull's best chance for a trend is tomorrow. So we'll see flat market here. IWM hanging on roughly to the 100-day Dow. The Dow and the Russell are on the weaker side. SMH had a good bounce, as we talked about. IGV, I still think this gets a zigzag, but a little bit of flatness here. Transport's backing off again, just an inverse trade to crude. TLT, no follow through on that move, on that setup from this morning. So I did not take it. It was there, and it got really close to triggering. It just never really triggered for me. I do think, you know, let's just look at that right now, because I talked about it this morning, and I should probably at least follow through on that. So I do think the trade's at least intriguing. So here's Friday. I mean, yeah, they came in. We'll see if that 86, we'll talk about that tomorrow if you guys remind me in the live stream on Carnivore trades. So when we do that tomorrow morning, remind me, and I'll go over TLT to see if that 86 converts. But as of right now, 89 still LG1. I'm sure it'll be 88 by tomorrow, though. But TLT getting hit, I don't necessarily think that's the end of the world for the market. Partly because I know that it's like, you know, inflation, oil. I think part of it too is you're seeing, again, I just mentioned oil up 6%, ES flat, NQ flat. There's less of a safety bid going on. So that could be part of it too. But yeah, it got hit. It got hit. So see what happens here. Yeah, ZB got rocked there. 2-year down as well. They're definitely not cutting rates. So that's for damn sure. Unless something big changes. XHP down 1.24. That's still got to hold 102.50 by the end of the week. IYR down $1.11, but still got an inside pattern here. Weekly chart is still decent. Banks were still under a little bit of pressure, but they held on to the low. Still got to finish strong to the to close out the week. Same thing with KRE, sloppy pattern down there, and broker dealers, same thing. HYG hanging in there too. Oil we mentioned it, a bunch of times here. I still think this has to tighten up. Right now, short-term resistance around 95 and 100. So there's your big breakdown bar right there. So there's your 95, and that's a big whole round number that goes all the way back. This line's been on my chart for literally years, going back to here. And keep in mind, this is like futures adjusted. And be careful using long-term charts on futures because they don't, this contract is not a thing anymore, right? So unless you have leaps, but they have 10 contracts on it. But yeah, 95, 100 whole round number there. You can see the 4 hour, what was I just looking at? Yeah, the hourly, that little cluster right there at $100. You can see that psychological level there, hammered it a few times, boom. But this will tighten up a little bit here. I still think this has some sort of zigzag down to the lower 70s. I don't think it breaks much below that though, unless something breaks. XLE finally caught a bid. XOP and OIH here. OIH now the weakest, that was the leader. Dollar index, that was helping keep the markets under pressure here. A little bull kind of flag-ish action. I would have preferred it to take out this high on a closing basis first before flagging, but it has held up in the face of everybody hating it. So usually good things happen, when things like that happen. Gold does have a bear inside bar here. But you'll notice you have higher lows the whole way up and you're above all the moving averages. I never trust a bear flag that's above the 20 MA, especially when the 20 is above the 50 is above the 100, the 100 is above the 200. Trend is up on all time frames. That said, it's still stupidly overbought on, the bigger time frames, right? So who knows, maybe it does play out. Dollar, is held up, like we said. Silver down 4%, which in normal circumstances would be a lot, but nowadays it's like nothing. And this has the bear inside bar too. Pattern's weaker, right? The 20 is below the 50. So silver's a little bit softer, but I like the steepness of the higher lows. So again, I'm kind of neutral on the PMs here. I haven't really played with them. There was a possible trade on silver this morning though. I did highlight that right there. It held that 85 handle. And if you take this, I saw it after it happened, of course, but nice 50% retrace. Right, you gotta love how charts work, right? Look at this. Look how far back this level goes, and then it happens to coincide with the 50% fib. That's perfect right there. Beautiful day trade level. I didn't see it until I saw it bounce, but it is what it is. We did good today. Same look on platinum, same look on palladium. Palladium's a little bit weaker. Copper is still hanging in there. This is really tight now too. Again, speaking of Bollinger Band width, this is tightening up on the, weekly still got a lot of tightening up to do, but it is consolidating. All right, again, last but not least, Bit Stonk. Holding up here. It's got higher lows and it's back above 69. I gave this level out too. Was one of the last things I talked about before we close out. I say, hey, watch 69.5. If it gets above that, it's going to rally. And a few minutes later, we see the end of the stream right at 9 o'clock. Boom. So nice move for Bitcoin. It's holding up. We can take this high out, make a new high on the week, and get a strong close. This can start to squeeze. So again, that could be a little positive omen for the markets, but we still need to follow through here. So Spider's got to clear that 680. I think across all expirations, 6850 is where your kind of zero gamma is. You got the 100 and the 20 right there. It's going to be hard to get through that, at least in one day. It has consolidated though, so you do have a 1-2. So you've got this set up for a 1, 1-2 pullback and a pop, but we'll see if it gets going. Jobless claims tomorrow. That's it. Oracle, we talked about that yesterday. I said 180, got to 170. I think 160 is the LG one there. But that was decent today. So anyway, we'll see what we get tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun. Remind me about TLT in the stream tomorrow morning, and we'll go over that as well as everything else. So anyways, you guys take care. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you guys all tomorrow.